I'm going to read you something out here. What is another word for populism? In politics, the word populist refers to someone who puts ordinary people's rights above those of the wealthy and powerful. It is basically a synonym of democrat, which when spelled with a lowercase d is simply a person who believes in democratic principles of rule by the people, freedom and equality. Now, having read that definition out, to be called a populist is simply that, isn't it? It's someone who believes the rights of the people should be put first before the elite, before the corporations. And it's used in such a derogatory format these days. Oh, it's populism. It's populism because it's popular, because that's what the people want. The people want to think that they matter. But unfortunately, what's happened over the years is politics has evolved into this big machine where government is created for the sake of government, and government breeds more government, and people that like more government are big corporations. You've only got to look at any of the rules that are made for employment. There are employment rules that can be easily established with a big corporation because there's plenty of money, there's plenty of people, there's plenty of space. They're a big corporation, but very difficult to implement on a small business. So what happens there, once you start getting legislation through that services the corporate interest before the interest of the individual, then small businesses struggle and the self-employed find it impossible. If you're self-employed and you're not feeling well and you go off sick, nobody's earning your money. If you're in a business and you go off sick, someone in your department will still be earning money for that business. So the self-employed need some sort of structure to look after them. What's happened over this last, say, 15 years, an area that's really grown has been the employment agency, because people are now terrified of employing people directly because of all the legal rights that allegedly people have. But they're quashed because the big corporations get around them. The big corporations can afford to do maternity leave, paternity leave for extended periods because they're a huge corporation. There's more people employed, so there's more people to take up the slack when someone's off. But very difficult if you're employed in a business where there's, say, 5 people. Each person has a particular job to do and that person is going to go off. There isn't the resources or the money usually to cover it. So the easiest thing to do is to pay more money per hour to an employment agent where you don't have to get involved in that. And the other thing that's always amazed me, one of the quickest people out the starting blocks with 0 hours contracts was the Labour Party. They actually implemented them. That's where people have no rights. Your Amazon driver, he's got no rights. He's got to turn up for work and do his job because he's on a 0 hours contract. He can't rely on any form of contract to back up anything that happens to him while he's employed with that company. Now, these are supposedly people who are bothered about us, the big corporations. And remember, these corporations added about 38 to 44% to their overall wealth during the lockdown period because it was the big boys that were allowed to stay open. The woman with the corner shop, the boutique, she had to close down. But huge supermarkets, they had to even take on more storage space to store the stuff they needed to sell because everybody was using the supermarkets. So, moving on from populism, populism is basically what most people want. And what you've got to look at, most of us want the same thing. Forget which political party you may side with. What do most people want? A nice home, a good neighbourhood where they feel safe, enough money in the pocket to pay the bills, and to treat themselves and their families to a meal out or to a trip abroad or whatever the agenda is. Change the car regularly, be able to entertain at home or go out for meals. Most people just want a quiet life that they can afford. Now, the government is supposed to be there to make sure these things are in place, so that the roads are repaired, so that when you drive out for a meal, your car's not going into potholes. They're supposed to do things like make sure there's school places, so your brothers and sisters, the brothers and sisters can go to the same school, rather than what's happening now, which is they're being split up. There aren't the spaces because of immigration. People are more people coming in, spaces are getting taken up, and kids are, brothers and sisters are at different schools. That never happened when I was a child. So what happens is then you've got to look at why populism is used as a slur. It's used as a slur because they don't want to acknowledge that it's what they should be doing. Because what all governments should do is listen to their people. But unfortunately, ordinary people, small businesses and the self-employed don't have the ear of the people in power. The people that have the ear of the people in power are the lobbyists who work for the corporatists. So you get a place like Brussels, for instance, which is 80% lobbyists. The employment in Brussels is made up of thousands of lobbyists who work for big corporations to be the middleman between the corporation and the politician to push policies that suit them. That's what a lobbyist does. Now, people get mixed up with corporatism and capitalism. Capitalism is someone like me, every man for himself, someone who comes from, snot-nosed kid from Lancashire, no education, but a willingness to work, a drive, an ambition to do something. You can do that. Or if you want to sit on your backside all day, eating pizzas and not going anywhere, that's fine. You can live in a country like Great Britain where there'll be some welfare state that can actually facilitate you not wanting to grow. But you need that opportunity, don't you? You need to be able to have that chance, if you want to be a self-employed joiner or be a mobile hairdresser. You're not doing anything illegal, you're not doing anything bad, but if you want to do a 65-hour week as opposed to a 35-hour week, the choice is yours. And that's what populism is, it's choice. Now, unfortunately, because people get mixed up with capitalism and corporatism, it's capitalism that always takes the blame. It's the capitalists. The corporations aren't capitalists, they are in a way, but it's corporatism, because it's the big companies that benefit from a lot of legislation, because it's usually driven by the lobbyist for the government to create the legislation that suits the corporation. So they benefit and the small business is crushed because of it. That's what normally happens. So big corporations like big government, they like more government, they like more legislation, whereas small businesses are better with a freer hand. So this is why we sit where we sit, because for decades now, since Margaret Thatcher really, after they ousted her and put John Major in, he was only slotted in. He was a Chancellor before that and he wasn't very good. But he was slotted in to get the Maastricht Treaty over the line, which enabled us to be more aligned with the European Union, which was only ever sold to the public as a trading bloc. Yeah, we'll join in with Europe, we'll be a bigger power, a bigger voice. That's how it was sold to us in the Ted Heath days. But unfortunately, it's evolved into this monster political entity that a lot of people in Europe right now are very unhappy with, because they have evolved into a law-making situation where a lot of the stuff that they're putting out doesn't suit a lot of the countries in the European Union. Greece is skint, Italy's skint, Spain's skint, Portugal's skint. Did you ever think you'd sit here and see Germany skint? Well, when the leader of the equivalent of the German stock market says at a dinner, an after-dinner speech, and says it's over, the good days are over, that tells you all you need to know about the European Union. Because if they can skint Germany with German work ethics, they can skint anybody. The euro's kept going. It's a false economy really, because it's kept up with quantitative easing, but now we're all at it. Every currency's kept up with quantitative easing, which is just printing money when you have none. But I'm trying to draw this into one central thing here, which is most people in Europe and Britain are absolutely up to ear with politicians and how the countries are being run, because there isn't one country that's happy with how they're being run. So we all have the wrong government. And it doesn't make much difference when the political parties change. And we're going to have a swap over probably today where another party will be in charge. But the same stuff will go on. High taxes, and for what? For a low return for the taxpayer. And when these politicians talk to you about what they're going to do and what they're going to spend money on, I'd like to see them, after they finish the speech, saying we're going to spend 25 million on this. And thank you very much to the British taxpayer, because really you're buying this for yourself. They actually introduce it to you as though they're giving you something. And it's very important to understand that governments have nothing to give. They don't create anything. They're a parasitic entity that lives off the back of the tax-paying public. So we are giving it to ourselves. Whatever it is they come up with, levies on fuel, taxes on fuels, cigarettes. I mean, people complain about smokers having health treatment. Dear God, they're the heaviest taxed people in the world. If you look at how much cigarettes are and look what the duty is on the actual packet compared to the actual price of the fag. Now, I don't think that we've got anybody in politics, in the big parties. When I say big parties, the more familiar parties, the Lib Dems, Labour, Tory. There's nobody in there with a strong enough character to enforce a popular change in how things are done. You've only got to look at, say, Hungary, Viktor Orban. He is a popular character. He's strong. You know he's strong. He doesn't take any mess. He's polite, but he's strong. Marine Le Pen, she's a strong character. What have we had? Rishi Sunak, who we didn't even vote for. The party didn't even vote for him. That's the worry, that we can end up with a leader that nobody actually voted in. Now, we don't vote for the leader in Britain. We vote for an MP, and the one with the most MPs gets the government. The others get the opposition benches. But they're supposed to work together, so the opposition challenges the government when the government puts unsuitable legislation through. But, as you know, with the last few years, nobody's challenged the government. The opposition has gone along with the government. There's been no challenge since they've enforced this tyrannical style rule because of the reasons they put forward an alleged emergency. So now we're getting back to what I will call more normal times, and yet that stranglehold on what they've got isn't being rescinded. They're not letting it go, are they? They're still keeping hold of quite a lot of the stuff they introduced during lockdown. They've not brought taxes down. They can't because they spent too much. And people are still blaming Brexit for the price of things. It's got nothing to do with Brexit, and it's got everything to do with the cost of lockdown. You cannot have a government, and the West has done it in unison. It's been a lockstep situation with all the Western governments that have overspent on PPE. They've overspent on new drugs that don't seem to be working and do carry risks. They've overspent on absolutely everything. Furlough. I've said it before, but furlough wasn't something. Rishi Sunak didn't think that I'll come up with furlough. Furlough was an off-the-shelf product, ready to go, already designed, just to be pulled out at a given time. Now, to encourage a nation to sit at home and not work is a bad thing, because they'll like it. Who wouldn't? You're getting paid, and you don't have to go and see your horrible boss. You don't have to go and sit in an environment you don't normally like. It would be great if life could be like that, but the only way they can make life like that is to make sure we're more controlled. So furlough is to get you used to sitting at home, and it's paid off because a lot of people haven't gone back to work. So do you put up with less and have more time? In which case the government will enjoy that, because there's one thing they can do. All governments, they can certainly give you less. They're not giving us what we want in any. I've looked. If you can find me something that our government is giving us that you can say, yeah, fair play, they've measured up on that front. please mention it on the thread, because I don't see the school system working properly. I don't see the public transport system working properly. The NHS certainly isn't working properly. And, well, the roads themselves, the actual repair of the roads, the infrastructure, things are needing renewing. And the sad thing is, the younger people in the 20s now, where they see broken pavements and weeds growing and litter about, they just think that's normal. But it isn't. And people my generation have witnessed the demise of our streets and our public buildings. We've got public buildings like town halls that are like ghost ships. Nobody's in it. There's nobody in our town hall. Please let me know if there's anybody in yours. There's about 3 staff. And the places used to be the hub of the local council, where important meetings were held and dignitaries came from other towns. What's happening? These buildings are still there. They're still heating them. They're still running them. But nobody's in them. And unfortunately, the town centres are dying because the rates are so high. Small businesses can't afford. They just cannot afford the rates. And so charity shops move in because they don't pay any rates. So your town centres have a demise. Now, in some respects, the demise is partly because there's these out-of-town shopping malls and areas. But the town centre should always be cosseted and looked after and kept up to, because it's the hub, it's the centre, it's where people might want to congregate. Sadly, a lot of towns and cities are so dangerous at night, people don't even want to go in them. Dortmund in Germany have vigilante groups going around because women aren't safe. I'll leave it to your imagination why. It's obvious, I don't think I need to spell it out. And unfortunately, the West is being hit by the same problems at the same time. And yet they still use the term populism as an insult. And it's not an insult at all. It's what every person wants. Every person wants to think they matter. And we've got groups of politicians who prove on a day-to-day basis we don't matter. I'm sorry, you cannot make me believe that Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak, any of them that come out, that they're bothered about me. Ed Davey, leader of the Lib Dems, flew in a private jet from Cornwall to Glasgow. And when he was doorstepped, basically, near the airport, I think, by a reporter who asked why, when he's been so vocal on green energy and climate change, why he used a private jet. And this is how detached these people are. He said, well, he had to get, from Cornwall to Scotland, and he wanted to see his kids. He needed to see his kids. And he actually said it as though that was going to make you go, oh, well, then he wanted to see his kids. No, because they don't want you to see your kids. They don't want you to go on holiday on a commercial jet to Benidorm with your kids, because you should forfeit that for the sake of the weather. So these people are hypocrites. They're not out for us. They're out for them. They're out for themselves. I don't see evidence, for me anyway. I don't see any evidence. I don't look at people where I think they're talking like me. Only Nigel Farage and 1 or 2 others. But this is why Nigel Farage coming back on the scene is very important. In or out of Westminster, his voice is important because he puts across the things that people are talking about in their own homes. We talk about world affairs and people love to get off on it, about what's going on abroad with wars and disruption and famine and other things. It's terrible what people have to go through. I'd feel for anybody living like that. And there but for the grace of God go I. But I want someone to concentrate on this country. I want someone to get this country right, because we're losing the plot. And we've now got an opportunity to nudge it back into shape. Because whilst Nigel Farage is giving it that, and the mainstream media are covering him giving it that, then we are showing the other people up for what they like every day of the week. Because he is talking like we're talking, and that's the difference with him as a politician. The difference is, he sounds like me. He sounds like you. They don't. They don't sound like anything I'm familiar with. Keir Starmer leaves me completely cold. I see him as a soulless character. Rishi Sunak, I see him as a smiling idiot. It's just like someone's got strings on him. And I don't think he can wait to get out. He can't wait to get out of the job. And as for Ed Davey kayaking, I mean, get back in it. You're as much use in a kayak as you are in government. So there's nobody there that talks like I talk, that sees what I see when I look round. When I go into town, I don't go into the town centre very often because I use out-of-town stuff. Local villages and farm shops, that kind of thing. But when I go into the town centre, there's a definite demise into what it was like 10 years ago. And I don't live in a bad town. And I go home to Blackburn, which is my hometown, and it breaks my heart. It actually breaks. I can't go. I don't go. I've stopped going because it breaks my heart to see it. And I just think, what have you done to us? We haven't been handled by people who are bothered about Britain. We've been handled by people who see Britain as a tax farm. Right, they're all there, they're encapsulated, they're on this island, tax them to death. Let's spend it overseas so they can go around on junkets in private jets and fly first class to talk utter bollocks about various things and fly home again. You know, these summits, what are they about? And if air travel's so damaging, why aren't you using it as a Zoom call? People have managed to do multi-million-pound deals over Zoom this past few years. Why do we need them to fly to somewhere like Bali to have talks? I mean, come on. You're not flying to Skegness, you're flying to Bali and places like that. Because it's just an excuse for them to get off on what they want to do. Well, they come up with ideas. All I've ever seen is the government's coming up with ideas to take our money from us. That's all I see. And we need to now, we can't afford, even ordinary people cannot afford to not take any notice of this. It's no good thinking, oh, I don't do politics. You should be saying, why don't I do politics? Because it's everybody that's affected. And I feel pretty good about it now because I think people are more revved up. And because we've been let down with Brexit, because the Tories have trashed it, they've trashed an 80-seat majority, they've trashed the Brexit vote, we're not under any illusion now that it's going to be easy. You know, I did think once we voted, that's it. At a given point, we'll come out and we'll get on and manufacturing will come back and everything will be great. No. Nothing like that. So it's important now to realise that, yep, the fight's back on, but you're not going to do it to us again. You're not going to make us go away and lie down and forget about it while you just roll us in manure for the next 4 years. That's not going to happen. And hopefully, whoever gets in, it's probably going to be Labour, will be a poor majority, because it's going to be a low turnout. There's still going to be a low turnout. But as I've said before, this business of spoiling ballot papers, it doesn't matter. They're not going to not choose a winner. It doesn't matter how low the turnout, they're going to choose a winner. That's it. So, but now we know what they're like. Now it's gone too far. They've rubbed our noses in it. We've seen it with everything. Net zero brought to top of the bill from page 54 of the manifesto. Page 54 meant it would have been handled the second term in office. They haven't even had a proper term in office. We've had that many leaders. And when you think 2 of them, since 2017 with Theresa May, we didn't even choose them. They were the understudy, the stooge. They also ran. And we ended up with them running Great Britain. How did that even happen? Well, it happened because we've took our eye off the ball. But no more, because more people are now politically engaged. And I am determined to continue explaining things in layman's terms, dead simple, because it's not complicated. Politics isn't complicated. They want you to think it is. They want you to think it is so you won't get too involved. Because they want you, go back, get to TK Maxx, go to pictures, get to football, go to a concert, don't bother us. That's what they want. What they don't want is you doing all that and listening to somebody like me once a day, once a week, and finding out that actually I am intelligent enough to take this in. Because it's actually pretty simple. You're ripping us off and we can do something about it. Because we can defend ourselves by complaining. I'm not asking for anyone to take to the streets. That's other people's jobs. I'm too bloody old for that. But I'm damn sure that between us we can have a better understanding of what's going on. I asked questions on the thread because it surprised me how simplistic it is to understand what's being done to us. So that's today. Obviously they'll be counting up tonight, won't there? There'll be people sat in those voting centres counting up, and tomorrow will be a new day, nothing to be afraid of. We know what's coming. I'd rather know what's coming than choose someone I think's going to work for me and then find out I have to keep... It's like being in an abusive relationship, isn't it? And keep forgiving the husband. I won't do it again. You know, that's what I felt like with the Tories. Hang on, you've got 80 seats, you're over the line. Where's Brexit? Why are we waiting? Oh no, I'll die in a ditch, Boris. Right, so that comes to July. Right, he's going to die in another ditch. That takes us through to September, and he takes us right to the wire. I'll never forgive him for that, never. And what's gone on since he was... Anyway, I won't talk about that because you two have a bit of a thing about it, what's going on overseas, the war and stuff. That's where we are. We're informed. People who follow me are going to stay informed. And if anything crops up that's kind of more urgent or new, I'll just do a quickie.